First thing my future sister-in-law said to me when I walked into the lobby of the Brennan Hayes Hotel wasn't hello. It was, "Oh, sweetie, the staff entrance is around back. Just follow the loading dock signs." She didn't recognize me. That part still gets me even now. 3 months later, when I'm telling this story to my therapist or my best friend, or apparently the internet. My name is Marlo Avery Caldwell. I'm 31 years old. And on the night of my younger sister's engagement party, the woman who was about to become my mother-in-law's best friend assumed I was the help. To be fair to her, I wasn't dressed like someone who belonged. I'd flown in from Singapore that afternoon on a red-eye, gone straight from the airport to my apartment to shower for 45 seconds, and thrown on the first dress I could find in a suitcase that hadn't been unpacked in 2 weeks. My hair was in a knot that was less chic updo, and more I have given up on my appearance for the foreseeable future. I had no makeup on. My shoes were the kind of comfortable flats that screamed, "I have walked through 6 airports in 3 days." But still, the dress was a real dress. I was carrying a Bottega bag that cost more than the woman's monthly mortgage probably, and I was clearly an adult woman over the age of 30 walking into a luxury hotel lobby with intention. The woman, who I would later learn, was named Cordelia Pemberton Whitaker. Yes, that's a real name a real human gave herself, looked me up and down twice, and then made a little waving motion with her bejeweled fingers, like she was shooing a pigeon. "Service entrance, dear. The Sutherland Caldwell event isn't accepting walk-in vendors at this hour. You should have been here for setup." I opened my mouth. I closed it. I opened it again. Here's the thing nobody tells you about owning the building someone is currently kicking you out of. The urge to laugh is overwhelming, like physically painful, like you might actually crack a rib trying to hold it in. Because the Brennan Hayes Hotel, the one we were standing in, with the marble floors and the stupid champagne fountain that I personally signed off on during the renovations 7 years ago, that hotel was the 3rd property I ever bought. I owned 47% of it outright and held majority voting shares to my company. The Sutherland Caldwell event she was referring to was being held in the Magnolia Ballroom, which I had named after my grandmother. The grandmother who left me the seed money that started everything. But Cordelia didn't know that. My sister hadn't told her. My sister hadn't told her future in-laws much of anything about me, as I would soon learn, except that I worked in business and traveled a lot for work and was kind of the family weirdo. So instead of correcting her, I smiled. I smiled the way I smile in board meetings when someone who got their job through their dad tries to mansplain my own balance sheet to me. "Of course," I said, "my mistake," and I turned around and walked out. I want you to understand what I was feeling in that moment, because if you've ever been the family disappointment, the one nobody quite knows what to do with, the one who shows up to holidays and gets asked, "And what is it you do again, dear?" by the same aunt for the 8th year running, you'll get this. There's a part of you that's furious, like burning, white-hot furious. And there's another part that's almost relieved, because finally, somebody is going to learn. I walked around the side of the building, past the valet stand, where Rodrigo, who's worked there since the renovation, did a comical double-take and started to say my name. I held one finger to my lips. He clamped his mouth shut and pretended to inspect a Mercedes. Around back, the loading dock was exactly where Cordelia had said it would be. There was a kid in a security polo standing by the door, maybe 22, looking very serious about a clipboard. He glanced up as I approached. "Vendor name?" I almost said it. I almost said Marlo Caldwell and watched his face do the thing faces do when they realize they've made a terrible mistake. But something stopped me. Some little gremlin in the back of my brain that whispered, "Not yet. Let it cook." "Catering supplemental staff," I said. "Late ad." He frowned at his clipboard. "I don't have a late ad." "Yeah, I know. Cordelia just sent me around. She said the kitchen needed an extra pair of hands." His face did something complicated. He clearly didn't like Cordelia. Nobody who spent more than 4 minutes with Cordelia liked Cordelia. But he also didn't want to be the guy who turned away staff she'd dispatched. He sighed. "Through the doors, down the corridor. Kitchen's on your left. The ballroom's 2 flights up. Don't take the guest elevators." "Wouldn't dream of it." The kitchen of the Brennan Hayes is, I will say without bias, one of the most beautifully designed commercial kitchens on the East Coast. I know because I designed it. Or, more accurately, I hired the woman who designed it and signed every check. The head chef, a man named Augustin Beaumont, who I'd personally poached from a Michelin spot in Lyon, was standing in the middle of the chaos shouting at someone about microgreens. He saw me. His eyes went wide for exactly 1 second. Then, God love him, his face went perfectly neutral. "You," he said, pointing at me with a wooden spoon. "Apron, now. We need someone on the canapé line." I grinned. I took the apron. I tied it on. For the next 2 hours, I stood at the stainless steel counter and assembled smoked salmon canapés while listening to the kitchen staff gossip about the wedding party upstairs. The bride, my sister Sienna, had apparently changed the menu 9 times. 9. The most recent change had come 30 minutes before service, when she decided the lobster bisque was too beige and demanded it be replaced with something with more visual drama. Augustin had served her a roasted beet soup with creme fraiche and a single edible flower and threatened to quit if she changed it again. The groom, my soon-to-be brother-in-law, a man named Whittaker Pemberton Whittaker III, because of course, was apparently nice enough but useless. He had spent most of cocktail hour explaining to the bartender why the old-fashioned wasn't being made correctly. The bartender, a woman named Imani, who I'd hired for her ability to make even the most insufferable guests feel valued, had reportedly responded by making him a Shirley Temple instead and calling him Champ. And then there was Cordelia. Cordelia, the groom's mother. Cordelia, who had apparently spent the entire afternoon supervising preparations, which mostly meant standing in the ballroom with a glass of Prosecco and telling the floral team that the centerpieces needed to be 10% more cascading. But there was something else, something quieter. The line cooks didn't know I was related to the bride, obviously, but they knew I was new and assumed I was a temp, so they talked freely, and what they were saying was this: Cordelia had been making phone calls all afternoon, whispered phone calls, from the corner of the prep kitchen, which is right next to the alcove where the staff break room is. A girl named Penny, who was on her break and eating a piece of bread, leaned over to me and said, "She's up to something. I don't know what. But she keeps saying things like, the timeline, and when the toast happens, and make sure he sees it. I don't like it." "Who's she calling?" I asked. "Couldn't tell, but she said Philip a couple of times. And once she said, just make sure it's loud enough for everyone to hear." I peeled the shell off another shrimp. I thought about my little sister upstairs, my little sister who I had loaned $260,000 3 years ago to start her interior design business, who had paid me back exactly $40,000 of it, who had then asked me 6 months ago for another $100,000 for a rebrand and expansion, who had promised with tears in her eyes that this was the year everything was going to change. My little sister, who told her future in-laws that I was the family weirdo, who had not once, in the 8 months she'd been engaged to Whittaker, invited me to dinner with his family, who had told me that the engagement party wasn't really a big deal and you don't need to fly home, it's just a casual thing. Casual thing. The Magnolia Ballroom was booked at $14,000 an hour. The flowers alone were $30,000. There were 240 guests on the list, and Cordelia was making phone calls about a timeline. I finished my shrimp. I wiped my hands on the apron. I took it off, folded it, and handed it to a passing line cook. "Thanks," I said. "I'm going to take a walk." "Hey," Penny called after me. "Aren't you supposed to be on canapés?" "I just got promoted," I said. I took the service elevator. "Not up to the ballroom. Up past it. The Brennan Hayes has 32 floors. The top 3 are private. Floor 30 is corporate offices for the company, which I rarely use because I prefer my apartment in the city. Floor 31 is a guest suite reserved for visiting executives. Floor 32 is mine. My apartment? My private office. My closet, which contained, among other things, a navy blue Carolina Herrera dress I'd had tailored last spring and never worn. I scanned my thumbprint. The doors opened. I went inside. I want to tell you that I had a plan at this point. I didn't, really. What I had was rage and clarity and a closet full of clothes that fit me properly and approximately 90 minutes before the toast that Cordelia had been so concerned about timing, I called my assistant. Her name is Jubilee. She's 24, terrifyingly competent, and was not enjoying her Saturday night. "Hey," I said, "I need 3 things. First, pull up the security feed for the Magnolia Ballroom. Second, find out who Philip is." Cordelia Pemberton Whitaker, the groom's mother, has been calling someone named Philip all day, and I want to know who that is and what their relationship is. Third, I need you to look at our holdings and tell me if we own any company that has Whitaker Pemberton or his father, Wallace, I think, on the payroll. There was a pause. "You're at the engagement party," Jubilee said. "I am. And you're making me research the in-laws." "I am. On a Saturday." "Jubilee." "I'm on it. Give me 30 minutes. I went to the closet. I changed. I did my makeup at the vanity in my bathroom, the way I do it for board meetings. Clean, professional, expensive. I did my hair in the way that takes 10 minutes if you know what you're doing. I put on my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones she gave me before she died, the ones I always wear when I need to feel like the person she believed I could become. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was not the rumpled jet-lag disaster Cordelia had shooed out of the lobby 90 minutes earlier. The woman looking back at me was the CEO of Caldwell Hospitality Group, owner of 14 luxury properties across 3 continents, and the only person in her family who had ever made it onto a Forbes list. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the transformation a little. Jubilee called back at minute 28. "Philip is Philip Hargrove. He runs a tabloid called the Tatler Times. It's mostly society gossip. Cordelia has hired him before, but for puff pieces, there's a paper trail of payments. Tonight, though, looks different. He's listed as a guest under a fake name and he's bringing a photographer. What's the play? I can't be sure, but I pulled the social media of Sienna's last 3 boyfriends, and one of them, a guy named Holden Vasquez, has been posting cryptic stuff for the past week. And he posted a photo this afternoon at the Brennan Hayes Valet. He's here. I think Cordelia paid him to crash the party and create a scene the photographer can capture. Story would be bride caught in love triangle on engagement night, that kind of thing. Why would Cordelia want to humiliate her own future daughter-in-law? That was your 3rd question. The Pemberton Whitakers are broke. What? Wallace Pemberton Whitaker II has been hemorrhaging money for years. His investment firm has lost 3 major clients in the last 18 months. He's leveraged the family estate twice. They have maybe 9 months of runway left at current spending. The engagement to your sister isn't a love match. It's a financial intervention. They think your family is wealthy. My family isn't wealthy. No. You are wealthy. Your family is comfortable. Your father is a retired orthodontist. So Cordelia thinks the Caldwells are some kind of dynasty. Sienna apparently let them think that. She's been name-dropping you for months without explaining who you actually are. They think Caldwell Hospitality Group is something her uncle owns, not her sister. I close my eyes. And the humiliation tonight? Hedge. If the wedding goes through, they get money. If it falls apart on Cordelia's terms, meaning Sienna gets caught in a scandal, they can pull out and blame her, save face, and start hunting another heiress. Either way, Cordelia wins. Tonight is her insurance policy. And the company we own that Wallace works for, tell me. This is the part you're going to like. Pemberton Whitaker Capital Advisors was acquired in a holding company merger 6 years ago. The parent is Meridian Trust. Meridian Trust was acquired 4 years ago by Caldwell Equity Partners. So I own his firm. You own his firm. You own his firm. He works for you. He just doesn't know it because there are 3 layers of holding companies between his paycheck and your name. I started laughing. I laughed so hard I had to sit down on the bathroom floor. Jubilee, I want you to do something for me. Anything. I want you to wake up Tom in legal. I want a contract termination drafted for Wallace Pemberton Whitaker, effective immediately, with cause. I want to know the exact language we need to enforce a non-compete and clawback bonuses paid out in the last 18 months. I want it on my phone in 40 minutes. 40 minutes is aggressive. Jubilee, my sister is about to be publicly humiliated by a tabloid photographer in my own ballroom. 40 minutes. On it, I hung up. I stood up. I checked my reflection one more time. And then I went to my engagement party. The Magnolia Ballroom is something I'm proud of. 20-foot ceilings, original crown molding, chandeliers we sourced from a chateau in the Loire Valley. When I stepped out of the elevator into the foyer, I could hear the string quartet playing something soft. There were 240 people in there drinking my champagne, eating my food, standing on my floor. The same security guard from the loading dock was now stationed at the ballroom entrance. He looked up. He saw me. His face went through approximately 7 stages of grief in 2 seconds. Ma'am, I am so sorry I didn't. What's your name? Devante, ma'am. Devante, how long have you worked here? 6 weeks, ma'am. You know who I am now? Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I looked at him. I thought about the comment my friend had once made about how the people at the bottom of an organization should be treated the same as the people at the top, and how the best way to learn how a company really runs is to walk in the back door once in a while. Devante, I'm not going to fire you, but I want you to do something for me. When my sister's future mother-in-law tries to walk out of this party in about 40 minutes, and she will try, I want you to politely inform her that hotel security needs to speak with her about an incident, and I want you to escort her to the staff conference room on the 2nd floor. Not the ballroom, not the lobby, the staff conference room. The one with the bad fluorescent lighting. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I walked into the ballroom. It took about 11 seconds for someone to notice me. I happened to be standing next to a waiter named Marcus when the first ripple went through the crowd, and I had the satisfaction of watching in real time as people who had been ignoring my existence began to register that the woman in the navy blue dress was somehow important, was somehow familiar, was somehow, "Oh my God," said a voice at my elbow. Marlo? It was my sister. Sienna, wearing a white dress that she absolutely should not have been wearing because this was her engagement, not her wedding, but that's a different conversation. Her face was doing something I don't think I've ever seen it do before. Surprise, layered with confusion, layered with a slow dawning horror. Hi, Sienna. When did you weren't supposed to. Mom said you couldn't make it. Mom didn't know I was coming. I wanted it to be a surprise. You look amazing. Why are you so dressed up? I always dress like this for important family events, Sienna. She blinked. There was something behind her eyes, something calculating and panicked at the same time. Like she was running the math on what my presence here, dressed like this, looking like this, might mean for the carefully constructed story she'd been telling her in-laws. Marlo, sweetheart, we need to talk. Privately. Right now. In a minute. I want to meet your fiancé first. And his parents. Where are they, Marlo? Sienna, where are they? She led me. She had no choice. Across the ballroom, weaving through clusters of guests who were now openly staring, to a small group near the bar. Whitaker Pemberton Whitaker III was tall, sandy-haired, and had the face of a man who had never once in his life been told no. His father, Wallace, was shorter, redder, and had the face of a man who had been told no recently and was still recovering. And Cordelia in a gold-beaded gown, holding a glass of my champagne. She turned. She saw me. She did not recognize me. This is the part I remember most clearly, even now, because I watched her face go through it, the little flicker as she registered the dress, the earrings, the hair, the way I was standing, the way Sienna was standing next to me, pale and frozen. And this was the moment, the real moment, the one I'd been waiting for since the lobby. I saw her recognize me, the woman from the lobby, the one she'd chewed out like a pigeon, standing in front of her, in a $4,000 dress, being introduced as her future daughter-in-law's sister. Cordelia, Sienna said, her voice slightly too high, I want you to meet my older sister Marlo. Marlo Caldwell. Cordelia opened her mouth. No sound came out. We've actually already met, I said. Briefly, in the lobby, you sent me to the service entrance. The silence that fell over our little group was the kind of silence that has weight, that sits on your chest. Wallace was looking between us, confused. Whitaker had gone slightly green. Sienna looked like she was about to cry. I didn't recognize. No, you didn't. It's all right. I was very rumpled. Marlowe Caldwell, said Wallace slowly, like he was tasting the name. Caldwell, as in the Caldwell. What do you do exactly, my dear? I run Caldwell Hospitality Group, I said. We own this hotel, among others. There was a sound. It was Cordelia's champagne glass hitting the marble floor. I am not, generally, a vindictive person. I would like that on the record. I did not become wealthy by being cruel. I became wealthy by working hard and being lucky, and being in the right room at the right time more than once. I have spent most of my adult life trying not to lord my success over anyone, especially my family, because I love my parents and I loved, for a long time, a version of my sister that I'm not sure ever really existed. But there are moments in life when the universe hands you a gift and you have a responsibility to unwrap it. Wallace, I said, I understand you work for Pemberton Whitaker Capital Advisors. Tell me, how's that going? It's been a challenging quarter, but 3 lost clients, 22% decline in assets under management. You're in default on a corporate credit line as of last Tuesday. His mouth opened. How do you? Because Pemberton Whitaker Capital Advisors is a wholly owned subsidiary of Meridian Trust, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Caldwell Equity Partners, which I founded and chair. You have, in fact, worked for me for the past 4 years. You just didn't know it. Cordelia made a small strangled sound. And Cordelia. I turned to her. I understand you've been making some phone calls today to a Mr. Philip Hargrove. I understand he's here somewhere with a photographer. And I understand he's here somewhere with a photographer. And I understand my sister's ex-boyfriend, a Mr. Porton. Holden Vasquez, is also here, possibly intending to cause a scene during the toasts. The blood drained out of Cordelia's face so fast I worried, briefly, about her circulation. Sienna, I said, without taking my eyes off Cordelia, did you know your future mother-in-law was planning to have a tabloid photograph you in a fake compromising situation tonight in order to break off your engagement on terms favorable to her family? Sienna's voice was very small. What? Your in-laws are broke, sweetheart. They thought you were rich. When they figured out you weren't quite rich enough, Cordelia decided to engineer a scandal so they could withdraw without losing face. Sienna turned to Whitaker. Did you know about this? Mom, what is she? Whitaker, did you know? No, I swear, Cordelia, I said. Did you know your son didn't know? Cordelia couldn't speak. Cordelia was, in fact, sitting down very slowly on a chair that wasn't there, and was caught halfway through her descent by a passing waiter. I could have stopped there. I could have, and probably should have, let the natural consequences play out. But Jubilee had texted me 30 seconds before, and I had one more card to play, and I admit, enjoying myself. Wallace, I said. As of 17 minutes ago, your employment with Pemberton Whitaker Capital Advisors has been terminated for cause, the cause being that your wife conspired to use a property of the parent company, this hotel, as the venue for a defamation scheme against a guest. That violates approximately 6 clauses of your contract and triggers a clawback of every bonus you've received in the past 18 months. Tom and legal will be reaching out Monday. Wallace sat down on the floor, just fully on the floor. Cordelia, having been deposited on the chair, was making fish-gasping motions. And Whitaker, to his credit, and I will give him this one piece of credit even though I don't think much of him otherwise, Whitaker turned to my sister and said, Sienna, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. Sienna was crying. The good kind of crying, I think. The kind where you've just been pulled back from the edge of a cliff you didn't know you were standing on. I stepped back. I let them have the moment. I found Devante at the door. I nodded. He nodded back and quietly informed Cordelia, who had recovered enough to attempt an exit, that hotel security needed to speak with her in the staff conference room. Mr. Philip Hargrove of the Tatler Times was discovered hiding in a coat closet on the 4th floor. His photographer had already fled. I let him go with a stern conversation about defamation law and a banishment from every Caldwell property in perpetuity. Holden Vasquez was located in the parking garage, refunded the $2,000 Cordelia had paid him, and politely escorted off the property. The party, somehow, continued. People are remarkable that way. Once the central drama left the room, the string quartet kept playing, and the canapes kept circulating. And someone had the good sense to pour my parents, who had been entirely unaware of any of this, a very large glass of wine, each, before I sat them down at a corner table and told them what had happened. My mother cried. My father was quiet for a long time and then said, "Sweetheart, I'm sorry we didn't know. I'm sorry we never asked enough about your work. It's okay, Dad. It's not, though. I know." Sienna and I stayed up that night in my apartment on the 32nd floor until almost 5 in the morning. We didn't fix everything. You don't fix years of a particular kind of dynamic in one night. But we started. She told me she'd been embarrassed by me for a long time and didn't fully understand why, and now she did, and she was sorry. She told me she'd told the Pemberton Whitakers a version of our family that she thought would impress them, and then couldn't figure out how to walk it back. She told me she didn't know if she even wanted to marry Whitaker anymore, and I told her she didn't have to decide that tonight. She paid me back the rest of the loan within 6 months. She started signing her own name on her business contracts instead of mine. She called me for the first time in our adult lives just to talk. The wedding did not happen. Whitaker, to his minor credit, took 6 months to think and then ended things himself, citing, accurately, that he needed to figure out who he was outside of his mother's plans. Sienna took it well, better than I would have. Cordelia tried to sue me briefly for emotional distress, a case so frivolous it was dismissed in 14 days. Wallace's clawback came through, the family estate went into foreclosure, and the last I heard, they were living in a condo in Boca Raton that Cordelia's sister owned. The leftover food from the party, Augustine's beautiful canapes, the roasted beet soup, the lobster that had been reintroduced on a smaller scale, was packed up and donated to 3 shelters in the city. Devante, the security guard, got a small raise and a transfer to the daytime shift at one of our quieter properties, where he is, by all accounts, thriving. And Penny, the line cook who whispered to me about Cordelia's phone calls, I sent her to culinary school. She graduated last spring. She's running her own kitchen now, at a bistro I helped her open in Brooklyn. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled it, if it was too much. If I should have just pulled Sienna aside privately and warned her about Cordelia, instead of making it a public spectacle. And I think about it, I do. There's a version of that night that's quieter, smaller, kinder. There's a version where I never put on the navy blue dress, and Cordelia never has to fall off the chair, and Wallace never sits down on the floor. But there's also a version where the photographer gets the shot, where the tabloid runs the story, where my sister, who I love, who I have always loved even when she didn't know how to love me back, walks down the aisle in 9 months and marries into a family that sees her as a paycheck. I'll take the navy dress, every time. I think about that night more than I'd like to admit, not the dramatic part, not Cordelia falling off the chair, or Wallace ending up on the floor, or the look on my sister's face when she finally understood what almost happened to her. Those moments fade. What stays with me is something quieter, and it took me months to put words to it. The truth is, every choice I made before I walked into that lobby is the reason I had options once I got there. I'd worked. For years and years I'd worked. While my sister and I drifted apart, while my parents asked the same polite questions about my business trips, while extended family quietly assumed I was the one who'd never figured my life out, I was building something. Not for revenge, not for a moment like that night, just because I believed that the work mattered and that doing it right, even when nobody was watching, was the whole point. That's the part nobody sees. People look at the navy blue dress and the company holdings and the moment of reveal, and they think it's a story about money. It isn't. It's a story about what happens when you keep your head down and do the right thing for long enough that the universe finally hands you a chance to be useful. Cordelia didn't lose because I was rich. She lost because she'd spent her whole life cutting corners, lying to her own son, and treating people based on what she thought they could do for her. The math caught up with her. It always does. And Sienna? My little sister, who almost married into a trap she couldn't see. She hadn't done anything truly cruel. She'd just been small, embarrassed, trying to please people who weren't worth pleasing. She got a second chance because someone who loved her was paying attention, and because she was, underneath all the noise, still capable of growth. That part matters. People can change, but only if they're willing to sit in the discomfort of seeing themselves clearly first. What I've learned in the months since is that strength isn't loud. The most powerful moment of my life wasn't the reveal in the ballroom. It was the 90 minutes I spent peeling shrimp in the kitchen, listening, watching, deciding, holding my temper, letting other people show me who they really were before I decided what to do about it. That kind of restraint isn't passive. It's the hardest thing in the world. If I could tell you anything from where I'm standing now, it would be this. Build quietly. Work when nobody's clapping. Treat the security guard and the line cook and the person at the loading dock the same way you treat the people in the corner offices, because one day you're going to need to know who they really are, and people only show you the truth when they think you can't do anything for them. That's the lesson. That's the whole thing. Everything else is just a navy blue dress.